Before the first restyling, the third-generation Range Rover was produced with two engines. Both engines are from BMW. German bosses shared the M57 inline diesel 6, but limited power to 177 horsepower. Those on the old E46 Troika, this engine was more powerful. In fact, insufficient power and swirl flaps are all complaints about this reliable motor. The second engine was a 4.4-liter V8 M62 with an original output of 286 horsepower. We recently reviewed this engine. A very specific motor with many vagaries and even the risk of scuffing. In general, the Bavarian V8 is considered the worst engine for a Range Rover. Believe it or not, English V8s serve much better and require less attention. A peppy Range Rover with a reliable engine, these are cars of the first and second restyling. We just have a car with the first update, which occurred in the 2005 to 2009 model years. Under the hood is a 3.6-liter turbodiesel V8. This is a very reliable engine, created by the PSA concerned for Ford. With timing chain drive. Call it Super HDI if you like, just change the oil in it every 10,000 kilometers, look for possible antifreeze leaks in the pipes and T's behind the engine, inspect the pipes through which air moves from the turbines before and after the intercooler. In the camber of this V8 there is a heat exchanger with an oil filter housing. It very rarely loses its seal and usually leaks antifreeze out. It will have to be replaced with a new one, LR006427, costing about $900. Another meanness that this engine can present is souring and breaking off of the glow plugs when they are unscrewed. To drill out broken glow plugs, you will have to remove the cylinder head. The Bavarian V8 under the hood of the restyled Range Rover has been replaced by two new V8s, created together with Jaguar. The 4.4-liter engine is naturally aspirated, the 4.2-liter is equipped with a drive supercharger. Both are built around an alloy block with cast iron cylinder liners. And these are really reliable motors. All they need for long, trouble-free service is high-quality oil and fuel. If these engines start to emit blue smoke and the oil level in the sump starts to drop, just replace the VCG valve, LR003380, everything will go away. If misfires occur, change the spark plugs. If traction decreases, replace the fuel pump. With these V8s it's simple. In the 2009 model year, Range Rover got a facelift for the second time and received a set of new engines. The diesel V8 has grown to 4.4 liters. It's still a Super HDI, meaning PSA engineers had a hand in its creation. A very reliable and desirable motor. Timing chains do not stretch, but the heat exchanger in the camber of the cylinder block has become more flimsy. It begins to sweat literally every 100,000 kilometers. Moreover, a decent amount of oil can leak through it, and a corresponding smell will appear. A heat exchanger for a 4.4-liter engine costs about $500, and there are also many good and cheaper substitutes. On a 4.4-liter turbodiesel engine during the recall campaign, the drain pipe of the left, small, turbocharger was changed so that oil would not be squeezed out through its cartridge into the exhaust system. At the same time, the car creates a smoke screen. This engine also requires attention to 4 adapter tubes on the intake manifold, which begin to leak oil and then may burst. One of the timing chain guide mounting pins is also slowly sweating. In this case, an oil slick appears on the front top of the engine. To eliminate fogging, you need to change the O-ring, and you need to get into the timing drive. Even in front of the 4.4 TDV8 engine, oil leaks may occur along the crankshaft oil seal and along the oil pump gasket. At high mileage, the engine cooling radiator may need to be replaced. Let us add that recently there have been rare cases of pistons burning out on a 4.4-liter turbodiesel. It is possible that this is due to chip tuning of these engines or very tired injectors. Both gasoline engines for Range Rover increased in volume to 5 liters in the 2009 model year. For the first 4 years, these engines went to service stations to replace the unsuccessful timing chain drive. The chain managed to crush the guides and damage the teeth on the timing clutches. What requires attention is a short-lived heat exchanger in the camber of the cylinder block and a short-lived cooling fan, which suffer from dirt and reagents. A signature Range Rover consumable is the expansion tank. It has to be replaced due to the appearance of a crack and the leakage of a significant amount of coolant, but an alert about a low liquid level may appear due to the fact that the sensor float sinks, i.e. will cease to stay afloat. The third-generation Range Rover was sold only with automatic transmission. Paired with BMW engines, the 5-speed engines were weak for such a heavy SUV. Automatic ZF5 HP24 with V8 and GM5 L40E with turbodiesel. They barely lasted 150,000 kilometers, and went into repairs for various reasons. After the first restyling, Range Rover received a much more advanced and reliable 6-speed automatic ZF6 HP26. True, this transmission suffers from loss of tightness of the valve body seals, which manifests itself in cold weather, and it is better to change its plastic pan every oil change to prevent oil leakage. After the second update, the Range Rover with a 4.4-liter diesel engine received an 8-speed engine automatic transmission ZF8 HP70. This is an even more successful automatic, less capricious, not suffering from overheating, but still prone to leakage along the sump and the electrical connector bushing. Range Rover automatics were equipped with a thermostat mounted on the tubes through which ATF is sent to the radiator and back. During production, engineers offered the option of an insert without a thermostat, which extended the life of the transmission. The entire Range Rover all-wheel drive drivetrain is very durable. A transfer case with a chain lasts for 300,000 kilometers and has to be repaired due to chain stretching. On many cars there is fogging at the junction of the transfer case and automatic transmission. This does not threaten anything terrible or expensive. If the opportunity arises, you can change the transfer case seals. We also note very rare cases of wear of the bearings of the transfer case and front gearbox, which are manifested by a hum. Extraneous sound from them may appear after a mileage of 300,000 kilometers. 4-piston Brembo front brake calipers are available on high-performance versions of the Range Rover. These brakes are effective, but start to jam quite early on. They have to be removed, the repair kit changed, and sometimes the brake pistons themselves along with them. All Range Rovers were sold with air suspension. Its air springs are not covered by anything from dirt, so after off-road rides you need to go to the car wash to wash off all the dirt from them. Otherwise, the air cylinders will wear through to holes and burst. By the way, the original front cylinders are inexpensive, $270 a piece. Rear ones, $350. There are also inexpensive substitutes. The ground clearance is monitored by 4 suspension level sensors. Often, due to broken wiring or faulty sensors, the Range Rover tilts the body over one of the wheels. Well, if the sensors are working properly but the car squats on one of the wheels without errors, then the whole issue is clearly an air leak from the air cylinder. Air can etch along the lower ferrule. It is better to replace the cylinder with a new, improved one, where the seal is more reliable. The upper cylinders can pass air from above along the rubber sealing ring between the shock absorber rod and the air suspension cup. If you ignore the deflating of the suspension, then you will have to replace the pneumatic system compressor. The front suspension of the third-generation Range Rover is McPherson strike. That is, the shock absorber is screwed to the steering knuckle. From below, the fist rests on 2 levers. This is all similar to the suspension of the first BMW X5 E53, but everything is designed for the greater weight of the car and increased travel. Well, taking into account the air cylinders, silent blocks of levers can be purchased separately, both original and replacements, and repressed separately. The ball joint of the oblique arm is also changed separately. Original front suspension arms cost $200 to $220. Good replacements are 3 times cheaper. A curious feature of the Range Rover is that the front and rear stabilizer bushings are welded onto its torsion bar and are not sold separately. However, upon closer examination of the spare parts catalog, you will find that original bushings are supplied separately for armored versions of the Range Rover. The steering rack serves well, but you need to watch out for fogging of the boots on the rods and on the input shaft. If it sweats a lot, you will have to remove it to replace the seals. But if it knocks, then most likely you will have to change it to one that doesn't knock. All rear suspension silent blocks are also detailed separately. Notice the huge lower control arm. Its silent blocks easily last 200,000 kilometers. But the silent blocks of the upper arm and the camber bolts have to be changed every 2 years. But this is not a costly procedure. The rear shock absorbers of many Range Rovers show traces of oil, but this does not affect their performance for years. If, when driving over road irregularities, something in the rear suspension begins to make a dull knock, then it is the rear silent blocks of the subframe that are asking for replacement. In general, the third-generation Range Rover chassis is very resilient and durable, and is fully repairable. But a burst air spring cannot be repaired. Wheel bearings are literally eternal, there are no questions about cardan shafts. Is the appearance of the Range Rover deteriorating, or does it retain its elegant appearance for centuries, like Buckingham Palace? Unfortunately, there are a couple of spots of rust on its body. First of all, the edge of the upper door leaf blooms. The door was repainted under warranty, repainted after warranty, but it continues to bloom. Another repaint is only a matter of time. Also, on almost all cars, the paint swells and corrosion develops on the rear arches. They say that if you do a good anti-corrosion treatment behind the arch liners, you can prolong the effect of repainting and welding the rear arches for a long time. While if the owner does not fight corrosion at all, then the paint on the rear door sills begins to peel off. On Range Rovers manufactured before 2011, the limiting cables of the lower tailgate often broke. An interesting problem with Range Rover is the rusting and swelling of wheel nuts. After this, the original 22 wrench will not fit on them. You have to take a 23 wrench or socket. The most experienced owners of these cars also carry a 21 socket with them. It will come in handy if the outer cap comes off the nut. Let's move straight to the electric filling of the Range Rover. The cars of the first years of production caused a lot of problems. The electrical system of this SUV was nervous. Engineers took years and numerous firmware versions to fix the problems. When purchasing, you need to check the operation of absolutely all electronic mechanisms, from light bulbs to the sunroof, mirror folding mechanism, door locks, and parking sensors. All mechanisms need to be pulled a couple of times, all buttons need to be pressed. Don't forget about the rear window washer. Often its nozzles stop pouring water due to a faulty valve in the system. Range Rover received a problematic steering angle sensor from the BMW X5. It has congenital problems with contact antennae, which simply break off, which leads to problems with the ABS and stabilization system. The steering angle sensor can be repaired, you just need to install durable contacts. The problem with disabling the folding mirror function is solved even easier. In the driver's mirror, the electrical connector on the position sensor snaps off. Insert it all the way and the problem will be solved. Range Rover has clever seat ventilation that can heat and cool. There are no heating threads provided here at all. At the back of the seat there is a fan that sends air to a special heat exchanger that can be heated or cooled under the influence of electric current. Often this thermoelectric converter fails. Craftsmen have come up with creative ways to repair it, but it is better to replace it with a new one. There is an analog from Ford, DU5Z19N550D, priced at $200, and do not allow rear seat passengers to hit the backs of the front seats with their knees. This may cause the air duct of the ventilation mechanism to burst, which will accelerate the failure of the heat exchanger. The stove fan motor may fail. You will have to replace it with a new one, disassembling the entire front panel. The fan, by the way, is suitable from the first X5 and the 5E39.